Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here today. If I'm not late, did I really even show up? I simplified my slides in the last hour. It was a labor of love as I was trying to cull down all of the documents that most of you probably do not want to see. But we're just going to get into it. I know that there are a few other people going live tonight, but thank you all for coming. Today we are going to get al dente with Dom, and this is the first episode of I Do Give a Dom. So we are just going to get right into things today, and we are going to talk about what I believe to be the most lied about food in human history. So, I believe that noodles or pasta is the most lied about food in human history, and it's sitting on your plate a lot of the times when you're having family dinner. Marco Polo lied, a pasta company lied about Marco Polo, the BBC lied to 8 million people, and a college student died from leftover spaghetti. The CIA literally named a top secret intelligence series after Marco Polo. And tonight we're going to talk about the real story of how those noodles got on your plate. So, as we dive into pasta, I do believe that it has an interesting side of history, and almost everything that we've been taught about pasta and noodles is a lie. So, we are going to talk about the 5 lies I believe most people have heard about pasta if you have heard of them. I look weird like this. So, 1 second. Okay. So, the first lie is that Marco Polo brought pasta from China. The second is that Italians invented tomato sauce. The third is that Marco Polo discovered America. The fourth is that spaghetti and meatballs is authentic to Italian. The fifth is that reheated pasta is safe. That's not always the case. And every single one of those is wrong. And the reason why is pasta is older than Italy. It's older than Christianity, and it's older than the written language in most of Europe. Humans in Africa were actually grinding grain into flours 18,000 years ago. Romans were eating boiled pasta dough 1,200 years ago before Marco Polo was even born. The Jewish Talmud has religious legal rulings about whether pasta counts as bread on Passover, and that's 1,500 years ago. So, how did we end up with the story that Marco Polo brought pasta from China? Because a pasta company paid to put it in a magazine in 1929. And that lie made it into all of our textbooks, in America at least. Sources suggest that this was actually deliberate. I'm going to show you why American newspapers from before the United States existed that cite Marco Polo for everything except pasta. But first, we're going to talk about Marco Polo himself. The man in your children's history books was a tax collector from one of the most violent empires in human history. He owned his own slave for 30 years, and reports say he hid an entire daughter for over 700 years until a Phoenician researcher found her in the will in 2022. His own children sued each other for 40 years after he died over a fortune that included 537 chests of amber beads. His bloodline ended quietly in 1417. One man alive today is reported to be the last living direct descendant, and he lives in Monaco. Then there's the FBI. The FBI investigated Marco Polo's maps in 1943 under J. Edgar Hoover. The CIA named a 20-year top secret intelligence series after him in 1953. The Library of Congress carbon dated his maps in 2008. The US government takes Marco Polo more seriously than most universities do. And I have declassified documents that I'm going to discuss tonight. And then it leads us to Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus owned a personal copy of Marco Polo's book. He read it obsessively. He wrote 366 handwritten notes in the margins. That book is still preserved today in Spain. And Columbus sailed west looking for Marco Polo's Asia. He never found Asia, though. He died in 1506, still believing that he had reached the East Indies. But here's the twist. someone did reach North America before Columbus. It was a Viking named Leif Erikson around the year 1000, 500 years before Columbus. His settlement is a UNESCO site that you can visit today. Almost nobody knows his name, and the lies keep coming. An Italian fascist poet teamed with Mussolini's government to abolish pasta in 1930. He got photographed eating spaghetti at a Milan restaurant. The BBC made 8 million Britons believe spaghetti grew on trees in Switzerland for a £100 budget. A failed Japanese salt merchant invented instant ramen in a backyard shed in 1958. The world now eats roughly 100 billion servings of ramen every year. I love ramen. I'm kind of hungry for some now. But then it gets darker. Pasta can actually kill you. A college student in Brussels died from reheated spaghetti in 2008. The bacteria's toxin survives reheating. Millions of Europeans were eating beef lasagna that was 100% horse meat in 2013. The British government called it an intentional criminal conspiracy. The world's largest pasta company nearly destroyed itself with one radio interview in the same year. And then there's the temperature danger zone. I'm super passionate about this one as a prior restaurant manager. But most people don't know that cut tomatoes are on the FDA's high risk list alongside raw chicken. Most people don't know that pasta related causes kill several hundred Americans every year. Most people don't know that Italy has a national pasta law that regulates spaghetti by the millimeter. And finally, it's what's on your plate. The dish that you call Italian was assembled from 4 continents around 500 years of displacement. The wheat is Middle Eastern. The tomato is Aztec. The chili is Mexican. The basil is Indian. There's nothing on your plate that is from where you think it is. And almost everything about pasta is a lie someone paid to put in your head. So tonight we're going to tear that apart. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is pasta. What even is it? So because most people get this wrong. Pasta and noodles are not separate foods. They're cousins in the same family. And that family is way bigger than you think. The official food category used by the USDA, FDA, and every world government is grain products. Grains come from the root family. So we have wheat, rice, oats, barley, and corn, my favorite. So we have bread products that are made from that, like loaves, rolls, and tortillas. Cereals, so oatmeal, breakfast cereals, and grits. Shout out to the cult that created cereal for us. Pasta, noodles, and dumplings, the boiled dough subfamily. And then we have the definitions. So what most people would consider noodles is the universal term: long, thin, unstuffed dough strands, wheat, rice, buckwheat, mung bean. Never even heard of that one before today or when I was researching this, and sweet potato. And pasta is what most people consider the Italian tradition of noodles. So it's the long, short, stuffed sheet soup shapes. And then we have the dumplings, which is the pasta or the noodles that's filled with dough pockets, usually boiled or steamed. So what is pasta legally? The Italian word pasta literally means paste or dough. And the Italian dry pasta is officially called pasta asciutta. I'm going to say that wrong, and I really dumbed down the way that I did my pronunciations today. So if I'm saying it wrong, oopsies, you're going to have to bear with me on that one. Oops, I'm going to move this because I don't like the way. Oh, that's nice. All right. So, all right, thank you. So Italian dry pasta is called pasta asciutta. U.S. federal law calls it an alimentary paste. It's Latin for nourishment paste, which is really interesting when you see the timing of when the lie started of where pasta came from. The U.S. has 15 legally defined pasta types, and it's under 21 CFR Part 139. I thought that part was insane. So When we look at it closer, pasta is a type of noodle. Noodles are a type of grain product, and every culture on earth has their own version. But hold that thought because we're going to go back in time. So, as we go back in time and I go back and forth between my two screens, as people make fun of me with my screens, um, we have the origins of pasta or noodles. I need to stop saying pasta because pasta is not the right term. Noodles. So we're going to go back in time because pasta is older than most people realize. Pasta is not Italian. Pasta is not Chinese. Pasta is human. Africans were grinding grain 18,000 years ago. And the Talmud has religious rules about noodles. The Romans ate pasta 1,200 years ago before Marco Polo was even born. So it's impossible what most of us know about pasta or noodles today. Modern humans, it's reported, evolved in East Africa around 300,000 years ago. About 18,000 years ago, at Wadi Kubaniya, in southern Egypt, humans were grinding wild grain into flour. And the Fertile Crescent invented farming around 12,000 years ago. So then that brings us to the emmer wheat, which was domesticated there. Pottery was also there for boiling water, which was developed in China around 20,000 years ago at Xin Rendang. And then we have all of the religious texts about pasta. So there's books in Jerusalem mentioning it, calling it itrium as a boiled noodle dough. Rabbis ruled it didn't count as bread for the Passover. And the Hebrew Bible mentions unleavened dough cakes in Leviticus 2. Greek physician Galen wrote about itrion in the 2nd century CE. Roman writers are also included in this, in the Roman foundations. So we have Horace in, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Syrio mentioned laganum in the 1st century BCE, around 1,200 years before Marco Polo was born. The Roman gladiators ate a pasta-like grain porridge called pulse. And then we have Italy before Rome. In the tomb carvings at Cervetare, from 400 BCE, it appears to show pasta making tools. So if those interpretations are correct, Italians made pasta over 1,600 years before Marco Polo was born. So the fact that he brought it from Asia is impossible in that aspect. And so I do have some dad jokes throughout this, but I have this one. Why did the ancient Roman never lose at noodles? Because he was always al dente under pressure. Sorry. I need like a little just joking. So pasta is genuinely ancient, and multiple civilizations made their own version before anyone in Europe had ever heard the name Marco Polo. And that brings us to the oldest noodles that are currently known on the screen. So when we're speaking of ancient, we need to talk about the oldest ones. And these are from Northwest China. Archaeologists pulled a bowl of noodles preserved by an earthquake for 4,000 years. The village was wiped out in seconds. The noodles, though, they survived. And they turned into powder within minutes of being uncovered. So they were discovered in 2002 at La Jia in China, in Qinhe Province, China. And they were published in a Nature journal in 2005. So roughly 4,000 years old, around 2000 BC is how old that they are carbon dating these noodles. These were made from millet, not wheat, and they were about 50 centimeters long and 3 millimeters thick, and they were hand pulled. The village was buried by an earthquake and flood in seconds. An upside-down bowl created an airtight chamber, and the lead researcher, I'm going to pronounce this one wrong, Liu Ho Yuan of the Chinese Academy of Sciences was the one that led the project and excavation of the site. So 4,000 years preserved by an earthquake, produced for us the oldest scientifically documented noodles that we have, and they're on our screen right now. They don't look delicious to me, but it's an interesting fact. It's an interesting fact. Um, they did turn into dust, though, according to the people that were there. This is another picture. So these are the ones when we're looking at where they found it on the site. Those look so appetizing. It's a nice picture of those noodles. Look at the carbs. And then here's another picture of them as well. So that is what is on our plate. Marsh, could we maybe like swap me on the right and this on the left? I'm so sorry. It's totally fine. Oh, well, thank you for coming and thank you for being live. Sorry, I am trying not to get distracted because I have a lot of pronunciating to do today, but I will be in the chat later at the end. Okay. So then we're going to talk about who Marco Polo really was. So Marco Polo, everyone has heard the name. What I know about the name is that Marco Polo was a game where you shut your eyes and played in a pool trying to figure out who and where everyone was at around you. And almost nobody knows what he actually did for a living. So Marco Polo was not an explorer, a great explorer. He wasn't a diplomat. He wasn't an adventurer. He was a tax inspector for the largest empire in human history. He worked for the grandson of Genghis Khan for 17 years. He was 17 years old when he left Venice and almost 41 when he got back. And his final words were, "I have not told half of what I saw before he died." That's what's reported. So Marco Polo was born around 1254 in Venice, and he died in January of 1324. His father was Niccolo, and uncle Maffeo were already established jewel merchants at the time. The two brothers had already met Kublai Khan once before in 1266. So Kublai asked them to come back, his dad and uncle, and bring 100 Christian scholars. Marco's mother died around the time of his birth, and Marco didn't meet his father until the age of 15. So his mother passed away around the time that he was born, and he didn't meet his father until the age of 15. And then he left at 17 on this journey. So his job for the Mongol Empire was what led him to leave Venice at the age of 17 in 1271 with his father and uncle. So he meets these people for 2 years, and then he goes and works for the Khan family with his dad and uncle. They traveled the Silk Road for 3.5 years at first. And we're going to talk about the map. So the map we're looking at is the Catalan Atlas, and it was made in 1375 by a Jewish map maker named Krezkez, Abraham Krezkez. I love how I put the last name pronunciation before that, so that's nice. On the island of Mallorca. It's the first known depiction of the Silk Road in European art. The caravan shown is believed to depict Marco Polo and his family. So him, his father, and his uncle is what is reported. And I'll zoom in on the next page because I have this like blown up with the right side. The caption above the camels read, "This caravan left the Empire of Sara to go to Cathay." And it's held today in France. So Marco reached Kublai Khan's court around 1275. The Polos brought a letter from Pope Gregory V and holy oil from Jerusalem. Kublai Khan personally appointed Marco as a foreign emissary, and his job actually included being a tax inspector, so auditing the imperial revenues across the empire. He was a foreign administrator overseeing tax collection in the conquered territories, a salt monopoly supervisor. So the salt tax was one of the empire's biggest revenue sources at the time. I guess you could call him a little bit salty. And then the diplomatic envoy sent to Myanmar, India, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. He actually stayed in China for 17 years. He spoke at least 4 languages. That is what people report on. Again, I was not there though. Mongolian, Persian, Turkic, Uyghur. I'm saying that last one wrong and I don't have the pronunciation of that. And a Chinese dialect. Marco never learned to write Chinese characters. I don't even know how you could like speak Chinese and not write them though. It's a little bit wild to me, but whatever. And then we're going to talk about who inspired Marco in the first place. So here is I'm going to make it bigger. Here is a zoomed in version of that Catalan atlas that is reportedly the first one of this time, just so that you guys can see it. And I will link the sources or post them, I guess, if people are interested in any of this on something X. I'm working on posting all my sources on my website as it gets finished. So with each show, all of the sources will be on there if you would like. It's really interesting though, looking at looks like Where's Waldo? I do agree. I mean, I like whatever that red thing is, I guess. I love camels. It's getting blurry as we're too zoomed in. So camels are like my favorite. I actually want like a few camels for my farm. Okay. So now we're going to talk about Marco Polo and who inspired him in the first place. And if I can get my thing right. Oopsies, I had it on the wrong screen. So the earlier travels of his own father and uncle were from 1260 to 1269. Niccolo and Maffeo had already reached the Khan's court before Marco was born. The Mongol Pax Mongolica was the 13th century is what we're talking about. And it was the safest time in the 1,000 years to travel the Silk Road. We have a lot of pronunciation coming up, so I need you guys to bear with me on this one. Okay. And then, all right, so I'm going to try each of these with my best effort. So we have, well, I know how to do half of them, just not the other half. William of Rubruck, a Flemish Francian friar sent by King Louis the Fourth of France to the Mongols in 1253 to 1255. We also have Giovanni da Pian del Carpani. That's a lot. That is a lot. So if you're laughing, I'm also laughing at myself. He is an Italian Francian friar who reached the Mongol capital in 1245 to 1247. And his report was the first detailed European account of the Mongols. Then we have Benjamin of Tudela. No, I said that wrong. Benjamin of Tudela. I said that wrong. He was a Spanish Jewish traveler whose 12th century account of Asia is widely circulated. And that actually, I believe, is the main one that inspired Marco Polo, which in turn inspired Christopher Columbus as well. What did he not bring back? He didn't bring back pasta, noodles, ice cream, the fork, or any tea. What he did bring back was paper money, and it's described in extensive detail. Also, asbestos, a sample of the fireproof cloth, detailed descriptions of coal as fuel. Europeans had never seen it. Detailed descriptions of the imperial postal system, relay riders covering 250 miles a day. And that's insane. I mean, think of getting your Amazon packages in one day, 250 miles from you if you live by a delivery thing. They were doing it back in the day. Not today, though. You have to wait till next day. And then detailed descriptions of salt monopoly and how the empire taxed it. He also brought back detailed descriptions of Chinese paper-making technology, and I found that to be really interesting because I did not realize where paper originated. or how they were making it and how that kind of changed over time. And a Tartar slave named Peter, he kept for 30 years or more. So then we have confirmation of some of this. So in 2012, a German scholar, Hans Ulrich Vogel, at the University of, I did not put the pronunciation of this, but it's German, Tübingen, published a 600-page academic book called Marco Polo Was in China. In this book, he cross-referenced Marco Polo's descriptions against the Yang Dynasty Chinese government records. These matches are so exact that Vogel concluded Marco Polo had been there. He describes the cowrie shells as currency in the Yunnan province, a detail confirmed only centuries later by Chinese sources. So, Marco Polo was a 17-year-old kid who became a tax inspector for the Mongol Empire, and he was inspired by Franciscan friars and Jewish travelers who'd gone before him and are not well known. His father had already been there, and he came back with descriptions so precise that 700 years later, German scholars used Chinese government records to prove that he was telling the truth. Then we have, sorry. Okay. I'm making sure I'm showing the slides if I have it with it or not. So I'm wondering if he had nothing to do with swimming, what would we call the game? I know, because there's really nothing, in my opinion, to do with swimming at all. So I feel like the game is more like it should be Christopher Columbus or Leif Erikson, not Marco Polo when you close your eyes, which I don't know. I've done a lot of thinking about that, looking into this. It doesn't make sense to me. So now we're going to move on to Mongolia, the Genghis Khan and the empire Marco Polo worked for. So to understand who Marco Polo really worked for, you have to understand Mongolia, which is very high on my list to go. Marco Polo's boss, Kublai Khan, was the grandson of Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire he served covered about 9 million square miles. It was the largest contiguous land empire in human history. People always talk about the Roman Empire, but rarely do they talk about this one. And it's not in order, but I'm going to pull it up because it baffles me that this was so large. 1 second. I don't have like the good map of it. No, it's okay. All right, I'm not going to do that because it's going to be too confusing the way that I have it set up. All right, back to business. So the largest contiguous land empire in human history, and I actually found this out a few months ago when I was looking up the Roman Empire, and I realized that the Britain Empire was actually bigger than the Roman Empire, and then that people argued between the Mongolian Empire and the British Empire, and I think it depends on what you consider the monarchy and everything else. Oh, that's so funny that we're talking about Bermgate still. I did not realize people were so passionate about the berms. I am too, and I'm gonna go there and take a picture by it next time I'm in Utah. So, Genghis Khan, that's what we're gonna get back to. So, historians estimate that this largest contiguous land empire in human history killed somewhere between 30 and 60 million people. So Genghis Khan, Temujin, the man who became Genghis Khan, was born around 1162 in Mongolia. His father was poisoned when he was 9. His family was abandoned and nearly starved to death. He spent his youth as a captive, escaped being a slave, and a tribal fighter. He unified the Mongol tribes by 12 or 1. I don't know how to say years like this. I feel like 1206, 1206. That like doesn't sound right. I'm used to saying like 2012, 1206. That sounds really off. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just too modern for the 1000s. um, at a Kulrati, a lot of pronunciation again, a Mongol Grand Council, and he took the title of Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. His armies covered territory in 25 years, more than the Romans did in 400. And he died in 1227. So the Mongol Empire at Marco's time. By 1275, the empire had split into four parts called the Khanates. The Yang dynasty in China ruled by Kublai Khan, where Marco Polo worked. And then we have, this is interesting. So we have, I don't have the pronunciation of this one. Ilkhanate, Persia, ruled by another Mongol cousin, and Central Asia, Chagatai Khanate, and then the Golden Horde, which is Russian and Eastern Europe. So the combined territory is roughly 9.27 million square miles, and the combined population is estimated to be 100 million people. The empire stretched from Korea to Poland. And then we have Kublai Khan. So this was Marco's actual boss. He was born in 1215 and died in 1294. Marco worked for him about 1275 to 1292. He was the grandson of Genghis Khan. He conquered the Song dynasty in 1279, completing the Mongol takeover of China. He founded the Yang dynasty, the first non-Chinese dynasty to rule all of China. He built his capital, Kalbe, the city of Kong, the modern-day Beijing, and Marco called it the city of heaven. Kolbe was famously interested in foreigners, and he used them as administrators because he didn't fully trust the Chinese officials. And this is why Marco, a foreign teenager, could rise to become a tax inspector, which sounds insane in modern day. So then we have the numbers of this Mongol body count. The historians estimate that the Mongol conquest killed between 30 to 60 million people. Some of those numbers, though, I am going to be honest with you, are all over the place. So this was approximately 10% of the world's population at the time under one empire. And then we have a bunch of massacres. So we have the Merv in 1221, a Persian chronicler reported 1.3 million dead. Then we have another in 1221, the Nishapur. The pyramids of skulls were reportedly built during this one. And then the year before, in 1220, we have the Samarkand, the population systemically slaughtered or enslaved during this one. And then we have, in 1241, the Battle of Legnisa. The Mongol forces cut the right ear off of every fallen enemy and filled 9 sacks. Sorry, I'm getting kind of sad about this. And then we have Baghdad. So in 1258, estimates range this one 90,000 to 1,000,000 dead. That is a huge range of numbers. But we have the Tigris River reportedly ran black with ink from the destroyed libraries and red with blood during this one. All right. So then we have Pax Mongolica, and despite the violence, the Mongols created the safest trade routes in history at that point. A merchant could travel from China to the Black Sea under one legal system. So this was called the Pax Mongolica, and it means Mongol peace, and that's what I'm going to say moving forward because that's a lot more simple. It lasted roughly from 1250 to 1350, and it made Marco Polo's journey physically possible. So when we look at this closer, Marco Polo's job was to inspect the taxes for the grandson of the most successful conqueror in history. His commute was 7,000 miles. And the only reason he could do that commute safely was because the Mongols had killed enough people to make the roads quiet, which is an insane thought in general. So then we have all of the people that called Marco Polo a liar. So for 400 years, and this is something that a lot of people don't talk about in his book, Europeans thought that he was lying and that it was fiction. It's not exaggeration. It is a literal fiction, a novel. And a lot of American newspapers from before the United States also existed. So Marco Polo was considered a liar to some for 400 years after his death. American newspapers from 1736 show debates whether his book was real. And after 500 years of debate, the only thing about him that's definitely false is the pasta story. So, a pasta company invented that part in 1929, the same year as the Great Depression. And we are going to talk about that after I show the sources with this other one. I don't think people really care that much about this, but we do have some interesting ones here. And this one is the 1736 Virginia Gazette. And I'm stating a lot of facts. So I'm reading my notes, and obviously I do better when I'm not reading. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anything. But the Virginia Gazette of October 1st in 1736, almost 90 years before America was a country, publishes an excerpt about Marco Polo. The exact quote in this one is that the first author that ever gave an account of the vast empire of China was Marco Polo of Venice, who traveled over great part of it, but his treatise, which came out in the close of the 13th century, passed at that time for a romance. For the Europeans could not be persuaded themselves that at the extremity of Asia and beyond so many barbarous countries, there could be a great, polite, and learned nation. So, because of the Mongols and everything going on at the time and what people had known about the Silk Road, they did not believe that it could exist. The word romance in 1736 did not mean love story, it meant fiction, made up, not real, which is kind of ironic how that word has morphed. And then the real American newspaper text from 1736 is saying that Europeans had treated Marco Polo's book as a novel for over 400 years, which is insane because it says that in our newspapers, and then historians are saying something else, and it's once other things were able to be cross-referenced. So then we have how Marco Polo got his reputation back. And the way that he did this are Catholic missionaries reaching China in the 1500s and 1600s. And those were the people that confirmed Marco Polo had been telling the truth. So the Virginia Gazette article continues and says the relation of which Marco Polo had given was a no fable. Adam Smith also cited Marco Polo as a reliable source as the Wealth of Nations in 1776. That reference was reprinted in American newspapers for decades. And some references are the Paulson's American Daily Advertiser in 1788 in Philadelphia, and then the Recorder in Greenfield, Massachusetts on March 7th of 1792. Smith wrote, Marco Polo, who visited it more than 500 years ago, describes its cultivation, industry, and pulpfulness almost in the same terms in which they are described by travelers in the present time. So then we have the 1799 Observer newspaper. So this is the Observer of London in February 10th of 1779. February 14th of 1799. I have the day wrong. Awkward. And it's talking about Marco Polo gives the following account. And the article is describing how Chinese paper money was actually made from a mulberry tree bark. And it was stamped with the emperor's red seal. And counterfeiting at this time was punishable and punished by death. So this is 475 years after Marco Polo's death, and a London newspaper is still citing him as credible for his historical sourcing. And so for 400 years, people thought Marco Polo in a lot of places was a liar, that it was fiction. For another 300 years, people considered him a credible historian. And then in 1229, a pasta company put the only confirmed lie into his story, which is what we know today. And then he somehow became a freaking pool game. He never claimed to bring pasta to Italy. That's only documented by a falsehood in his entire legacy. And it was invented by an American trade magazine to sell more spaghetti as the stock market was crashing. So So throughout this, I went back through a bunch of American newspapers before the United States existed, because you can do that, and I'm a nerd. And the Virginia Gazette in 1736 mentions Marco Polo, not pasta. Paulson's American Daily Adventure Advertiser in 1788 reprinted Adam Smith citing Marco Polo. Again, no pasta. The Recorder in Massachusetts in 1792 reprinted the same passage. No pasta. The Observer in London in 1799 cited Marco Polo on Chinese paper money with no pasta. And for 200 years of pre-1929 American newspaper coverage of Marco Polo, the pasta connection never appears. Marco Polo was a suspected liar for 400 years, and then a credible historian for 300. Then a pasta company put one lie into his story in that 1929 article. And that's the only thing most people know about him today. That's not history, that's marketing. So then it gets a little bit weird. It's already weird, I think, but it gets more weird. So now I love a good ancestry and how things tie together. But this is something that I thought was pretty incredible. So we can actually read, if you know Latin, Marco Polo's actual descriptions of magical lands from Christopher Columbus's personal copy of the book. This one that I'm showing here shows Columbus's own handwriting in the margins, which I found to be really interesting. At first, I thought this one right here might be pasta. Plot twist, it's not. So Marco Polo described a place in India called Maabar, where magicians used incantations to charm sharks, so pearl divers could work without being eaten. Columbus owned the book that contained that story. Columbus wrote 366 notes in the margins, and that book is still preserved in Spain today. And the page about the magical sharks is one that Columbus annotated. So, so it's the same page we're going to be looking at. So this that I have on the screen is Christopher Columbus's personal version of the 1485 Latin edition of Marco Polo's book. The Latin title, I'm not going to say, but it translates to The Customs and Conditions of the Eastern Regions. Translated from Marco Polo's Italian by Dominican friar Francesco Pipiano around 1320, he wrote, that's awkward, hold on. I skipped my notes. Around 1320, Columbus owned this copy and annotated it personally between 1497 and 1498 is the years that we're seeing this handwriting up on the screen. If I do that back, is that backwards when I go like this? Is that backwards? I don't know. Okay. So, in it, he's writing those 366 marginal notes called pastils. And he probably received it as a gift from an English merchant named John Day, is what I found when I was looking into it. His son, Hernando, inherited the library, which became the Biblioteca Capitu. I should have paid more attention in Spanish. Thank you, husband. Biblioteca Capitular y Colombina in Spain. The handwriting you see in the margins of this image is Christopher Columbus's actual handwriting. I feel like a broken book saying, or a broken record saying that. That's funny. So in it, we have a bunch of different things that he has on the different parts of whatever side of the screen this is on. And the Maabar was written was the Arabic name used in the 13th and 14th centuries. It refers to the Coromandel coast of Southeast India. The word Maabar in Arabic means crossing point or traverse. It was a major hub linking the Bay of Bengal trade with the Arabian Sea trade, which I found to be really interesting as well. During the Mongol Yang dynasty, ships from southern China routed through Maabar on their way to Arabia. Marco Polo's description of Maabar are so detailed that scholars believe he had to have been there personally. And then that brings us to my favorite sea creature, The magical sharks. Marco Polo's describing the pearl divers working in the Gulf between Ceylon, modern Sri Lanka, and India. The diving season ran from the beginning of April to mid-May. Divers traveled to a place called Bitalar, then 60 miles into the Gulf, and the water was 10 to 12 fathoms deep. I really want to know what a fathom was. I did not look into that. The Gulf was filled with what Marco Polo called great fish, meaning sharks. To protect the divers, merchants hired magicians called Abrahman. So, Abrahama. I really cannot read some of these words. It looks like more like Abraham, but it's not. It's Abrahman. The reality were that, oh, thank you, Marsh. A fathom is a unit length equal to 6 feet, primarily used for measuring the depth of water. So 6 feet, 10 to 12. Okay. So we're looking at like 60 plus feet. That's insane that people. Okay. I don't think the magicians were just being used for the sharks because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think most people could go that deep with pearl diving. That's kind of impossible. Unless we're talking about the people that live out there that basically don't have a home and they live there and can breathe underwater for long periods of time. I think that's kind of impossible. So, in reality, these people were Brahmin priests. According to Marco Polo's account, the sharks would be rendered harmless during the daytime. At night, the Brahmins dissolved the charm so that the sharks could work mischief at their will. The Brahmins were paid 1/20th of all pearls caught. The king received 1/10 as a royal tribute. Why this mattered to Columbus? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but Columbus's personal 1485 Latin copy contains this exact passage. Columbus annotated this section with marginal notes. He was obsessed with the wealth, the pearls, the rubies, and the marvels. He marked passages about rubies and pearls in particular. He saw these descriptions as proof that sailing west would lead to fabulous wealth. And he took this book with him when planning his westward voyages. The overall point of this, though, is that this is one of the few places where Marco Polo describes something genuinely supernatural in detail. Modern scholars now believe that Brahmin priests really did perform rituals before pearl diving seasons. The magic was probably actually a religious ritual combined with traditional shark deterrent techniques, whatever the heck that is, because I don't think that you can actually deter sharks that way. Most humans don't actually taste good to sharks, and they won't eat you anyways because we all sweat out of our pores for the most part, and that doesn't taste good. The magic may not have been magic at all. It may have just been not living in fear and acting like bait. But Marco believed it, Columbus believed it, and European map makers also believed it. So when we look closer at this, Marco Polo wrote about the magicians charming the sharks for pearl divers in India. Christopher Columbus reads it, and he's writing notes in the margin. And the book is still in Spain right now. You can go and you can see Columbus's actual handwriting in it. And that's how the age of exploration started, with one Venetian's stories about magic in India. So to understand Marco Polo a little bit better, I'm going to go to this next page that none of us can read unless you can read Latin either. But to understand Marco Polo, you have to understand his world. His world ran on the slave trade. Marco Polo's Venice didn't just tolerate slavery, it ran it. Wealthy Venetian merchant families routinely owned domestic slaves alongside their furniture. And Venice itself was reported to be one of the largest slave trading ports in the medieval Europe. How common was slavery at this time, though? Venice was a major slave trading power from the 8th to 15th centuries. Sources suggest that by the late 12th century, the slave trade in Venice exceeded any other Italian capital. Reports also indicate that profits on individual slaves were enormous. Wills from the 13th and 14th century in Venice frequently mention household slaves alongside furniture and silverware. Where did these slaves come from, though? Pagan East Slavs from Central Europe, the Caucasus, Armenians, Georgians, and Circassians, Russian and even Greek Christians sold to Muslim buyers. And they were all captured, for the most part, during the Tartar raids and Mongol Golden Horde conquests. The Tartar slaves from the Black Sea region, including that man named Peter, whom Marco Polo owned for 30 years, were a part of this slave trade. But how did it work? Venice operated trading colonies at Tana and Kaffa in Crimea. And after the Constantinople fell in 1204, Venice gained the Byzantine commercial privileges. Venice and Genoa dominated the Black Sea slave trade from 13th century onward. And the Rotolo and San Gregorian markets in Venice were active slave markets at this time. So then we have Peter, who was a Tartar that was Marco Polo's slave. When I think of tartar, I feel really bad, but I think of like that dish, tuna tartar. And I just had that thought pop into my head. Word vomit. Marco owned him for 30 years at least, and reports say that he only freed Peter in his deathbed will on 1324. So Marco Polo wasn't unusual for owning a slave at this time. He was typical. That's not an excuse. It's just context for at the time. So I didn't want that to like kind of muddy the water, not floody the water, floody the water. I know finding anything in the water 60 feet deep is actually kind of insane. With the pressure, and I'm just trying to picture that right now because like you don't have goggles at this time. Goggles are not a thing. You're not using diving gear. You're just going down, eyes in the salt water that's also being taxed by the empire, and you're like, let's get these pearls, and I'm only getting 1/20th of this, and the king's getting 1/10, and I'm the one going down here. It's just a little bit weird. I think of the tartar sauce with the fish sticks. I also think I don't like fish sticks. I don't really like fish. So I do like a good tartar sauce if I'm eating fish because I don't like fish. So, then we're going to go into the standards at the time. So, even in this time period though, when we talk about what people were like, Marco's family had a lot of dirt. They had a lot of dirt. So his bloodline ends in a very strange place. Marco Polo worked for an empire that historians say killed tens of millions. Reporting indicates that he hid a daughter for 700 years. He sued his own cousin, and his main line is reported to have ended in 1417. One descendant claims to still be a direct descendant of him today, living in Monaco, but I'm not convinced of that with the 1417. But he did have a secret daughter, and she was not discovered until 2022 by Marcello Bulanieri. I love that for me. A researcher at the University of Venice. I'm also not going to pronounce the Cafosacri. He found a will in the State Archive of Venice. The will belonged to a young woman named Agnes Polo. She died around the age of 24 in 1319. Marco Polo was named as her father. Reports suggested that she was likely born out of wedlock between 1295 and 1299, and her existence was unknown for 700 years. So then we have the 40-year family lawsuit. Marco was suing his own cousin for an unpaid loan. His daughter, Fontiana, spent 40 years suing her in-laws and Venice magistrates for stealing her inheritance. She was disputing the inheritance that included 537 chests of amber beads, 91 silk garments, a gold table, and silk almost changing color. I don't even know what that means. Almost changing color. Like it's a magical silk, I guess. She eventually won. And then we have where the line ended. So what we do know is that there are three legitimate daughters, Fontiana, Belila, and Mortia. If I'm not pronouncing that right, I'm trying. All three married into Venetian noble families. The direct Polo male line is reported to have ended in 1417, but we do have that one modern man, Sirio Polo Podolica, a former Italian diplomat who is reported in multiple sources to be the last living descendant of him. And he lives in Monaco. So I would assume that that's through the illegitimate bloodline, but who really knows? So, what did Marco Polo say when his ravioli got stolen? You really stuffed me. So, when we look at Marco Polo closer in this context, he was a tax collector for the Mongols, a slave owner, deadbeat dad, family litigator, and his male bloodline died out by 1417. One descendant is reported to be alive today and still living in Monaco. So then we have the FBI investigation. And that's where it gets weird. So the FBI looked into and actually named some things about Marco Polo. In 1943, J. Edgar Hoover personally signed an FBI investigation into the maps of Library of Congress that some claim show Marco Polo's family knew about Alaska 200 years before Columbus, which is interesting and kind of a weird argument in general when we think of Leif Erikson, but I guess that was a different part, not Alaska. The maps are still there. You can see them in the Library of Congress, and they're carbon dated in 2008. So when we look at the full government investigation, in 1887, Italian immigrant Marcion Rossi arrives at Ellis Island carrying 14 parchments. He claims that they're family heirlooms passed down through Marco Polo's family. In 1933, Rossi writes a letter to the Library of Congress asking whether the map is authentic. 1933 to 1943 is when Rossi corresponds for 10 years with the library's chief of the Division of Maps, Lawrence Martin. In 1943, the Rossi family donates the map with ship during World War II. In 1943, the FBI investigates the maps as part of a wartime security review. I found that to be bizarre. The FBI's analysis is personally signed by J. Edgar Hoover, the longest-serving FBI director in history, who has a very dark, interesting past. The 1940s is the Library of Scientists using this ultraviolet light photography to enhance the faded text. In 1948, we have a cartographic scholar, Leo Bagro, who's publishing the first academic study in Agamo Mundi. In 2008, the Library of Congress conducts the radiocarbon dating on the parchment. The vellum dates between 1463 and 1526, or 1556 to 1663, meaning the surviving map is a copy of the early original. So in 2014, Benjamin Olsen publishes the definitive study with the University Chicago Press. So we're going to talk about what is on this lovely map we have going on here that's very confusing. Because I'm like, okay, weird map, but better than what I could draw probably, I guess. Maybe. Actually, 100%. So Marcion Rossi was a real Italian immigrant who arrived in 1887, and that's documented. He really did own the maps and correspond with the Library of Congress for 10 years. It's also very documented. The FBI really did investigate them, and J. Edgar Hoover really did sign the analysis. The Library of Congress really does hold them in the National Collection. That's very documented as well. The vellum is really from the 1400s to 1600s based on the 2008 radiocarbon testing. And this is scientifically verified. But, I mean, lobotomies also used to be normal. The maps contain genuine medieval cartographic features confirmed by Leo Bargro's 1948 academic study. So then we have what's kind of disputed or what people consider fiction. The claim that Marco Polo personally drew these maps is disputed. The claim that the maps prove pre-Columbian European knowledge of America is also disputed. The reference to a peninsula of the land of sea lions possibly being Alaska is speculative. The reference to a peninsula of the deer, possibly being the Bering Strait region, is speculative. These are real maps. They are real FBI files. This is in the real Library of Congress in the holdings. We do have real radiocarbon dating from 2008. But what is still unknown is whether they're copies of the real 13th century origins or 19th century forgeries. The case is still open. And I love hearing about this because my favorite part of when I'm in Hawaii is hearing about some of the lesser known spoken history that I think ties into this eventually as well as people navigated the seas. So then we have. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So the CIA named a 20-year intelligence series after Marco Polo. If the FBI sounds wild, wait till you hear what the CIA did. In 1953, the CIA started a top secret China analysis series and named it Polo, as in Marco Polo. Okay. So, Marsh, I don't know if we can swap it. I think I have it backwards. Do I have it backwards? I clicked on the wrong one. That's what. Nope. Okay, we're going there. So, in 1953, the CIA started a top secret China analysis series named Polo. I already read that, as in Marco Polo. There's 147 documents, 11,000 pages, and it was classified for 54 years. Declassified in 2007, and you can read them on the CIA.gov right now. What are the CIA Polo Papers, though? The CIA Caesar Polo and ESAU papers are declassified series of an analytical report. It's written in 1953 to 1973, and there are those 147 documents with over 11,000 pages. It came out to the public in 2007, and the Polo Papers specifically cover China with 38 documents. The Caesar Papers cover the Soviet Union with 53 documents. The ESAU papers cover the Sino-Soviet rivalry with 56 documents. But why did the CIA name it Polo? The CIA named its China intelligence series after Marco Polo because he is recognized even by U.S. intelligence as the foundational Western source on China. And in the 13th century, he's still known in modern day as the Venetian merchant who became the namesake for 20 years of a CIA China analysis, which I found was insane. So then we have in there too, making sure the year's the same, and it's not, but 20 some years later, in 1972, we have the CIA Shanghai Brief. This isn't just symbolic. The CIA literally was still using Marco Polo as a research benchmark in declassified briefing documents. And the CIA Shanghai intelligence report in January of 1972 was classified as confidential at the time. In the direct quote, in AD 1279, the port declared itself independent of Suzhou, and it began paying taxes directly to Peking and changed its name to Shanghai, which literally means up from the sea. It must still have been relatively unimportant, however, as Marco Polo, who wrote all of the major cities in the region at the time, failed to mention it. So the CIA Peking Brief in 1975, classified confidential at the time, prepared the Nixon administration in the diplomatic mission. The direct quote, travelers had always been strongly attracted to Peking. Marco Polo spent several years here in the later part of the 13th century, when the city was known as Tatu or Kablik, before returning to Europe to spread tales of Peking's fantastic beauty and riches. So that's why most people, I think, didn't believe it existed, because the Mongols were so brutal at the time. The CIA was briefing presidents about China using Marco Polo as an historical anchor. The FBI were the ones that investigated him. The CIA was naming him in a 20-year intelligence series and naming it after him. The Library of Congress is carbon dating his maps, and the U.S. government takes Marco Polo more seriously than most of our universities do. But the crazy thing is, he wasn't even All right, I'm not gonna say a I'm not gonna say that. Leif Erikson beats Christopher Columbus by 500 years. So we actually have the guy who did what Marco Polo gets the credit for, in my opinion. A Viking named Leif Erikson reached North America around the year 1000, 500 years before Columbus, who was inspired by Marco Polo. We have actual medieval Icelandic manuscripts that recorded his voyages. And his settlement is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Yeah, I have it. Oh, here's the Shanghai Brief. Whoopsies. Oh, wait, that's me. Awkward. Here's the wrong side. Is this backwards if I'm pointing this way? Is that on it? I don't know why I feel like it's backward. Oh, no, I don't want it that way, but I'm asking if I'm pointing, is it wrong? Do I point this way if it's over here? That's a dumb question. If I point here, am I pointing at the paper? Okay, that feels so weird. So, I don't like that it's like backwards. So the Viking, Leif Erikson, is reaching there. And that's the next page. Hold, please. There we go. So, and this is in the Icelandic manuscripts. And he is actually called, or also called, Leif the Lucky. He was born in 970, in the 970s. He died between 1018 and 1025. His father, Eric the Red, is supported to have founded Greenland after being banished from Iceland for killing a neighbor. I thought that was bizarre. Around the year 1000, Leif sailed to North America, and he named 3 regions there. So we have Helaland, the land of flat rocks, so probably Baffin Island, and then Markland, the land of forests, probably Labrador, and then Vinland, so wineland, probably Newfoundland, is what we have going on there. And we actually have medieval manuscripts that recorded this as well. So it's a little bit bizarre, but that is I'm taking a drink. I need a drink. Oh, I'm thirsty. Okay. So we have the saga of the Greenlanders throughout this, and it is preserved in the. Now, I thought pronouncing some of these other words were hard, but then we have the Icelandic words. So, yay, Iceland. And it's the Flate Jarbok manuscript, and it was created in 1387 to 1395. It's one of the largest medieval manuscripts ever made, with 225 volume sheets, and it's held today at the Arni Magnusson Institute in Iceland. So we have Eric's Saga Rotha. I hate that too. The saga of Eric the Red is what it translates to. And it is preserved in 2 medieval manuscripts in the 14th century and 15th century. Both are held at the Institute in Iceland as well. They were written down between 1220 and 1280. And the only strict historical references to Vinland appear in the Adam of Bremen's Historical Treatise Around the World in 1075, in the Book of Icelanders by Ari the Wise in 1122. But we also have the archaeological proof. So we have a confirmed Viking site in Newfoundland. It was discovered in 1960 by the Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad, and it was carbon dated to 990 to 1050 CE. The tree ring is pinpointing the wood cut exactly at 1021 CE. A UNESCO World Heritage Site is something you can still visit today there. The U.S. observes Leif Erikson Day every October 9th. So, Leif Erikson is the first real European in America. 2 medieval Icelandic sagas record his voyage, and a UNESCO site marks where he landed. October 9th is his day, and now you know. But the reason why this is important is because of how things moved across the globe and how pasta got on your plate today, because that's kind of where we got this weird noodles going on. Have fun at work. You can always come back later. and eat some carbs. Maybe you can take a nap through your work. I'm joking. All right. So before we get to your plate of spaghetti, though, you need to know why Christopher Columbus actually sailed. It wasn't to find new land, it was to find black pepper, my least favorite spice, my least favorite thing in the whole entire world, black pepper. I hate black pepper with a passion. I think that it's a pointless spice. I think it tastes like crap. And I think that it's too spicy. It's just like, man, there's so many better things that we could be doing out here. I mean, they went the whole Silk Road and got better spices, and we're like, ooh, black pepper everywhere. No, thank you. If I see black pepper on my plate, I'm not eating it. We actually don't even keep black pepper in the house. It's like a thing. So Columbus didn't sail to discover America. He sailed because the Ottoman Empire had jacked up the price of black pepper. He died still believing that he reached Asia, and the book that convinced him to try was Marco Polo's. So, who was Christopher Columbus? Christopher Columbus was born in 1521 in modern day Italy. His real name was Christopher O. Comlabo. That's nice. I'm not saying that right either. His father was a wool weaver and a tavern keeper. Columbus went to sea at the age of 14, which is also insane to me. He was shipwrecked off of Portugal in 1476 and washed ashore. He married a Portuguese sea captain's family and learned the Atlantic navigation. He read voraciously, especially geography and travel books, and he owned and obsessed over his annotated copy of Marco Polo's book. Why he actually sailed, though, again, is because the Ottoman Empire conquered the Constantinople, ending the Byzantine Empire. The Ottomans now controlled the entire overland of the spice trade. They taxed the European spice imports heavily, sometimes confiscating the cargoes outright. But the spices in the 15th century Europe were enormously valuable. And I remember learning about this in school. But we have black pepper, thumbs down. Put a -10 in the chat if you hate black pepper like me. I'm joking. But I don't know. I'm not a fan of black pepper. We also have cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and ginger. European kingdoms started funding voyages to find sea routes that bypassed the Ottomans. Portugal went south around Africa, eventually succeeding with Vasco da Gama in 1498. Spain funded Columbus to sail west instead. So here's the Marco Polo connection. Again, he owned that 1485 Latin edition of Marco Polo's book, and the book is still in Spain today with his handwritten notes, and he focused obsessively over these two things. So the wealth of Japan at the time, Sipagu, I'm not saying that right. And it was said to have palaces roofed in gold. The vast cities of Cathay, China at the time, Spice Islands further south. I would like to go there. I'm made to be on an island for sure for the rest of my life. And the Great Kong, who I wouldn't say is that great with how many people he murdered, but supposedly wanted to welcome Christian missionaries to his area. He made a geographical mistake, though. Columbus calculated the Earth's circumference using an outdated 2nd century estimate. He cherry-picked the lowest possible figures. So my guy can't do math either. He thought Asia extended further east than it actually does. He underestimated the size of the Earth by 25%. I have no idea how you do that when you go to sea at the age of 14. He thought Japan was only about 2,400 miles west of Spain. It's actually closer to 12,000 miles. He had no idea there were two huge continents in between. I know, Allison, that's why I only eat 0.1% of all cuisines. I'm joking. But he has a few voyages that I wanted to point out. And one is August 3rd of 1492, and he's sailing from Spain with 3 ships, the Santa Maria, the Pinta, and the Nina. In October 12th of 1492, he lands in the Bahamas. So from August to October, he's sailing. Also, I love the Bahamas, and he did land on an outer island, and they do have some really cool sights there because of this, actually. But it's really sad because you think about what we just talked about with the slave trade. And you think about how that impacted people far more because there were far more land and more land to conquer. And that's what everyone was into at the time. He believed he reached islands off of the coast of Asia when he landed. He calls the indigenous people Indians because he thinks he's in the East Indies. He makes 4 voyages in total: 1492, 1493, 1498, and 1502. He never sets foot in what now we call the United States of America. But then we have what he actually did to the indigenous people. He immediately enslaved the Taino people on his first voyage. He demanded gold tribute from every adult Taino on Hispaniola. And those who could not pay had their hands cut off. His brother Bartholomew administered increasingly brutal punishments as governor. The Taino population on Hispaniola dropped from an estimated 250,000 to fewer than 14,000 in 20 years. Columbus was arrested in 1500 by Spanish investigators and shipped back to Spain in chains. He was then released, but his governorship was revoked. So when he died on May 20th of 1506 in Spain, he died with a significant wealth, but a bitter and convinced that he had been cheated. He died believing that he had reached Asia. The continents we now call North and South America were not on his map. It was Amerigo Vespucci. I am not saying that right. I can't even speak English half the time, so I'm trying. Amerigo Vespucci, who around 1503 first argued publicly that this was a separate continent. That's why America is named after Vespucci, not Columbus. So Columbus read Marco Polo obsessively, was a savage, in my opinion, and should have probably been put to death, but who am I to judge? Columbus sailed west looking for Marco Polo's Asia. He found a hemisphere instead with his greed. He killed thousands of indigenous people trying to extract gold that wasn't even there from land that wasn't even his, or he had any business being on or being kind to. And he died not knowing that he'd done something different than what he was trying to do. So basically, Christopher Columbus is a failure in pretty much all ways, shapes, or forms of life. And I don't think he should be someone that's celebrated. He was a brutal individual for no reason. In 1292, we have the macaroni journal lie that we're going to get to. Here's another cute version of this map up here. I know everyone was like that at the time. I feel like humans are still like that. They just try to hide it, which makes me sick to my stomach. What people do, what people scheme, what people come up with, how people let this world's pleasure damn their souls by the decisions they continue to make. I think about that a lot because it doesn't have to be that way. And I think sometimes people think getting ahead or scheming to get ahead in certain ways instead of doing the right thing or working hard and being kind and being someone that they would want to be around is going to get them where they want to go, and it's not. You're just going to be in like a roundabout forever. You're going to have to answer for that one day. And it's not good. It's dark. It's not of the light. So, and I don't do that. I shine out that darkness in my own life. So, we're going to talk about how the Marco Polo pasta myth got into our textbooks, though. And it's another doozy. Humans are not wired to be kind, but I think, this is an interesting. I like this. I'm going to talk about this for a second. I agree with you, but I think that it's because of the way that we have institutionalized good versus evil as external versus internal. Like when you look at the origins of scripture before a king made a version, you see that even Carl Jung, who I'm not a big fan of, is talking about how you really need to do a lot of internal reflection because we all have good and bad in us. And, the creator God is within us. And you have to examine yourself and know what you're capable of. And you have to be able to hold yourself accountable, knowing that we are all capable of good and bad things. And I think that's what makes the world go around. And that's what makes a lot of pain be continuous in history to repeat itself because people don't want to take accountability. People don't want to do self-reflection, and people want to be a victim in a lot of things in life. And we all have a choice every day to choose the right thing, whatever that is. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you think it's the right thing and it's not. But we all have the choice every day, even in situations where someone has wronged you, to choose to be the light in that situation. And a lot of people sadly choose to not be and to react to it. But you are the only one that gets to choose that. And that's the ugliness and beautiness of this world, I think. No, we don't. The light only. I don't feed any darkness within me, personally, not on purpose at least. So I know that I am capable of being very mean to people that are mean to me. Do I choose to do that? No, because I don't know what battles they're dealing with internally, externally, and a lot of the times, hmm, the decisions that people make, a lot of people take everything personally every day. I do it. You probably do it too, but you know, I need to stop saying, I started saying that a lot. You don't know. I'm just saying that instead of You are the only one that can decide how you react to anything and everything. And you are the only one that can choose to be kind to someone that may be not being so kind to themselves. And in the process of them being not kind to themselves or hating themselves, you may think they hate you, when in reality, that's not the case. I think most of us think people are thinking about us all the time. And most of the time, everyone's thinking about themselves. Like right now, I'm on camera and I'm thinking about what does my face look like right now. I'm not even looking because if I look over there, that'll stress me out. But when we get up and we're giving a speech in school, we're thinking about how everyone's probably like, oh my gosh, look at that, look at this, blah, blah, blah. Most of them are like thinking about, wow, I forgot my school lunch today. Wow, I can't believe so and so doesn't like me. And humans are just inherently selfish. We are, but we can choose not to be. And it's in human nature for our survival skills to be selfish. But to be selfish with money, to be selfish with greed, and things like that are on a whole new level with consumerism in modern day. And I never remember humans being so selfish, even in my childhood, that we wouldn't open the door for other people, that we're not sitting there. And it's like weird if people smile at you in public today. That is the most bizarre thing. I do think there is always a choice. I do think there's always a choice. So that's okay. You don't have to agree. I do think there's a choice because humans are on this world, but we're not made for this world. I mean, we are, but we're not. This is not where we're going to be forever. So I think you do have a choice. Um, everyone does every day, but that's just my own opinion. I know. I agree. I found it easier to be it's over there, so I can't see. I found it easier to be rude in a large city in a small town. I'm not about to cut someone off or not hold a door because everyone knows each other. And I think this is crazy too because I grew up in a smaller area. I live in a bigger I'm still always holding the door, even if it's like 20 people coming through. And it's not even because I do think that growing up in a small town can help instill some of these things, but it's like it's bizarre to me. The one thing I hate growing up in a small town is that you do not have a lot of privacy, which is nice and also not nice at the same time in different ways, but, sometimes it's great to just go to the grocery store and not see people you know. It is ki I think so as well. I think that the knowledge and awareness and the all-knowing is not something humans are ever going to know. And I think that social perceptions make us think that we don't have a choice when we do, and a lot of times social perceptions are not always the norm either, like in real life at the yeah, I think that it's when you look at very ancient old Bibles, or if you look at history before the Torah, I think that it's very, very clear that, um, a lot of things were to institutionalize and to have control, just like how they voted on what went into the Old Testament and the people that were exiled that would not vote, and how they chose to vote as a bunch of men in a room, 300 men, whether God was subordinate or whether Jesus was subordinate to God or not for control of that. It's a very interesting part. I think it's important to smile at everyone. My grandma used to always say this all the time too. All the time. But again, that's like a social I don't know, there were people that were freeing them as well, and I think that there were people that chose to work and live with families and stuff too, but it's interesting. It is interesting. I like this. I agree with this. I don't know where I'm pointing. I'm, like, pointing everywhere. You guys can see my notes of, like, "Turn the page." I'm such a nerd. Okay, so now we're gonna talk it's not even on the screen, but now we're gonna talk about macaroni. Alright, so we have some interesting things going on, and we're gonna talk about how the Marco Polo, myth got into your textbooks. So everything you just learned or heard me babble about, whether you liked it or not, you're welcome. Oh my gosh. Actually, hold on. Ah, okay. Here we go. And it's backwards, so if I'm pointing, I don't know, but we're gonna go each way, all the ways. So, everything we learned about Marco Polo bringing pasta to Italy traces back to this single trade magazine on the screen here on the right. And it was from October of 1929. The pasta company invented the story, they built a marketing pipeline to push it, and they got it into Hollywood. They got it into our textbooks as well, which is interesting when you think about that. And the reports indicate that it worked for 90 years because that was the plan. So, in October of 1929, published in the Macaroni Journal, the official trade magazine is the National Macaroni Manufacturers Association. I thought that was funny that that's even a thing. Was titled A Saga of Cathay, which is interesting because Cathay was China at the time. Um, it was written as a fictional historical legend. The article invented a sailor on Marco Polo's expedition, literally named Spaghetti. And the article carried a Keystone macaroni manufacturing copyright in 1928, the year before. A lot of researchers, though, believe that this was deliberate. In October of 1929, this was the exact month that the Wall Street crashed. Pasta companies needed to sell pasta to a country that suddenly couldn't afford luxury food. The article was written in folk tale style, not as marketing. The distribution and trade publications regularly circulated material to schools and Italian American cultural associations. There was also an industry coordination. So the food historian, which I would be a nerd that would want that job because I love the food that built America and all that stuff. Obviously, I'm talking about pasta today. And I did not wear it, but I have a whole pasta outfit. I have a pasta costume. It is saucy. I'm just joking. It's not saucy at all. I don't even know what that means. I said that as like a dumb dad joke, but it's a huge like sewing hoop. It's huge. And it has meatballs and pasta on it with suspenders. I made it. I made it. But Jane Grigson, the historian, traced the spread of a myth to a Canadian spaghetti company running in the same period. There was also a Hollywood follow-up. So the 1938 Samuel Goodwin film, The Adventures of Marco Polo with Cary Grant, put a spaghetti discovery scene on the screen, which is crazy. They didn't call him Giovanni or Marco. They named him Spaghetti, and a marketing brand built into this folk tale still repeated by some today. But it is definitely false. Romans ate laganum in the 1st century BCE, 1200 years before Marco Polo. In the ancient Jewish texts, it mentions Atrium in the 3rd and 4th centuries. In the Arab Syrian geographer Al Adirishi, I'm glad that you guys are hearing me pronounce these words that I'm like, WTF is going on, wrote about the Sicilian pasta exports in 1154. I hate that I'm also saying that weird. I don't like it. Over 100 years before Marco Polo was born. Marco Polo himself wrote the Chinese noodles were like ours. And the pasta company wrote one paragraph in 1929. Hollywood ran with it in 1938. And then the textbooks were copying it by the 1950s. The marketing won. Literally. So then we have the futurist war on pasta. So in the year after the 1929 article, we have an Italian poet declaring war on pasta. An Italian fascist poet tried to abolish pasta in 1930. He said that pasta makes people lazy. It does. It always makes me want to take a nap. Except I really do like the feta pasta. That one doesn't make me lazy, but can you sit to your left or me? Oh yeah, I need to. Well, I'm like already I moved this backwards and I feel kind of off. Hold on. Let me move. I have all these pillows. I have like 30 pillows. Okay, can you swap me to the other side of the screen? Reverse. Okay. Oh, I love it. I actually do like this. You can't see my face. You can see my hair though. This layout isn't an issue, but nice Uno reverse. Wait, it isn't, so you can see me? Oh, you can see my face right now? Why can't I see my face? So I can't see what my face looks like? Hold on. I gotta see what my face looks like. Okay. If you can see my face, I'm gonna trust you, but I can't see my face on StreamYard, so it's weird. I know, pasta is a temptation. I love a good pasta. So, the year after the 1929 article, we have an Italian fascist poet trying to abolish pasta in 1930. He's saying it makes people lazy, and he worked alongside Mussolini's government. He failed because I can eat pasta today. He got photographed eating spaghetti at a Milan restaurant, and his name, Filippo Marnetti, a fascist poet, the founder of Futurism, it was the guy. And in 1930, he published the Manifesto of Futuristic Cooking. So he's the reason I guess we can thank for McDonald's. He called pasta an absurd Italian gastronomic religion. That's crazy to me. And he aligned with Mussolini's battle for grain in 1925. In 1932, he's publishing that cookbook as well, the futuristic cookbook. And then the sources document a 1930 photo that I mentioned of him eating spaghetti at the Biffy restaurant in Milan. So he claimed that the photo was doctored, which could be possible. Historians find this unconvincing, though. And when we look at it, a fascist poet tried to abolish pasta, Italians ignored him, Italy lost a war, and Italy ate even more pasta. So he lost as well. Also a failure. That's what happens when you get greedy, because greed and your ego are what fuels most evil in this world. And you don't need any of it. So you don't need your ego and you don't need greed. You don't need things. You need basic needs, and that's about it. One more pasta lie that was deliberate, though, is on 8. This one's so funny. So here's the other parts of this article. You can see the saga, I don't even know how you say that, of Cathay. I like how we have salmonella over there. This whole thing is about macaroni and noodles, which I think is crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. OMG, focus. Me? I'm supposed to focus? Macaroni Journal is my favorite publication. Squirrel, why are you posting that? Grain is unhealthy. I feed my pasta grain-free food. Well, original grains were healthy. Grains today are not healthy, but that's also because they literally call it a nourishment paste and have genetically modified ancient grains. Is in my opinion. But we do now have the fun video I'm going to play as I take a bathroom break because I've been chugging drinks to try to stay hydrated. But on April Fool's Day in 1957, the BBC convinced 8 million Britons that spaghetti grew on trees in Switzerland with a budget of £100. Okay? So this aired April 1st in 1957 on the BBC's Panorama. It's 3 minutes long, and it's narrated by Richard Dimbleby. And the budget was literally €100. So I am going to also say, before I hit play, 20 pounds of cooked spaghetti was draped over laurel trees in Switzerland for this one, and 8 million viewers were fooled. It was the modern-day mermaid documentary of our time. Docu-mockery, whatever you want to call it. And 8 million people, 3 minutes of TV, £100, and that's how cheap it is to fool a country. So what else do you think you're being fooled on today? Probably the Italian paste. Oh, yeah, he was messing me up. So I am going to play this video. I think I have it backwards though, because that's on there. Okay.
It isn't only in Britain that spring this year has taken everyone by surprise. Here, in the Ticino, on the borders of Switzerland and Italy, the slopes overlooking Lake Lugano have already burst into flower, at least a fortnight earlier than usual. But what, you may ask, has the early and welcome arrival of bees and blossom to do with food? Well, it's simply that the past winter, one of the mildest in living memory, has had its effect in other ways as well. Most important of all, it's resulted in an exceptionally heavy spaghetti crop. The last 2 weeks of March are an anxious time for the spaghetti farmer. There's always the chance of a late frost, which, while not entirely ruining the crop, generally impairs the flavor and makes it difficult for him to obtain top prices in world markets. But now these dangers are over, and the spaghetti harvest goes forward. Spaghetti cultivation here in Switzerland is not, of course, carried out on anything like the tremendous scale of the Italian industry. Many of you, I'm sure, will have seen pictures of the vast spaghetti plantations in the Po Valley. For the Swiss, however, it tends to be more of a family affair. Another reason why this may be a bumper year lies in the virtual disappearance of the spaghetti weevil, the tiny creature whose depredations have caused much concern in the past. After picking, The spaghetti is laid out to dry in the warm alpine sun. Many people are often puzzled by the fact that spaghetti is produced at such uniform length. But this is the result of many years of patient endeavor by plant breeders who've succeeded in producing the perfect spaghetti. And now, the harvest is marked by a traditional meal. Toasts to the new crop are drunk in these poccolinos, and then the waiters enter bearing the ceremonial dish. And it is, of course, spaghetti, picked earlier in the day, dried in the sun, and so brought fresh from garden to table at the very peak of condition. For those who love this dish, there's nothing like real homegrown spaghetti.
I have no idea how I beat that video back. If you watched it twice, I don't know how to tell time. I know I don't know how to tell time, but I especially don't know how to tell time. It's also backwards the way I have this, so it's getting weird getting used to it. Okay, so that's why the spaghetti tree probably said to the farmer, "Don't leave me hanging." And apparently people will believe anything. We should know that with time. So there are some weird pasta laws I wanted to cover and safety to make sure that you were preparing your pasta correctly so that you don't die, because that is possible. Pasta is not just a food, it's a very regulated product, believe it or not. And Italy has a bunch of national pasta law. Spaghetti is regulated by the millimeter, and America has 15 legally defined pasta types. In the Italian pasta law, they have a presidential decree number 187 of 2001. And it states that spaghetti must measure between 1.92 and 2.03 millimeters in diameter. Egg pasta legally requires 4 hen's eggs per kilogram of salmonella. I found that to be interesting as well. And I want to know what tape measure they are using to do that job. Also, somebody hire me for that job. I'll just like be out there with my little, I take it when I used to fly Spirit Airlines, and I would have it in my pocket when they would try to tell me that my bag wouldn't fit, because it would. It always would. And it would always fit under the seat too. And I got tired of paying for it twice. And then I just would fly like Allegiant or something when I go on a one-way to see my friends. So America's federal pasta law is defining 15 legal pasta types. And obviously, we love the carbs. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, Title 29, Part 139 is where you can see this. And then we have the EU pasta law. The EU pasta law. How many angles are harmed a year to make an how many angles? That's so embarrassing. I said angles. I'm going to not read the comments until I can pour them over here, because I'm like looking all the way over there as well. Dom, don't be a Joe. When was I a Joe? When was I a Joe? When was I a Joe? I did not believe that Switzerland trees thing. I promise. So the EU regulation is 1151 in 2012, and the pasta from Gargano must be made in Gargano, Italy. Who would have thought? So why doesn't pasta ever break the law? Because it always follows the al dente mental rules. I'm just joking. That was so cringe. So cringe. Spaghetti, in my opinion, is one of the most, pasta and noodles is one of the most lied about foods on this floating rock. And then your spaghetti and my spaghetti, because it's all of our spaghetti, unless it's in my belly, then it's mine, is one of the most regulated foods on earth. And from what I'm seeing across the globe. So then we have a very interesting scandal. So we have the 2013 horse meat lasagna scandal. And in January of 2013, we have frozen lasagna across Europe, and something was very wrong. Millions of Europeans were eating beef lasagna that was actually 100% horse meat. 13 countries were affected, and people went to prison over this. It began in January 15th of 2013. And in February of 2013, Findus brand frozen beef lasagna tested at 100% horse meat. Tesco's market value reportedly dropped 360 million euros. The supply chain was from a Romanian abattoir, a Dutch trader, a Cypriot trader, French firm Spang Hero, and Luxembourg factory. Then it went to Fundus and European supermarkets. So that's kind of the flow, but like I totally butchered that, just like they butchered that horse. The consequences came in August of 2017. The Idornakis Sideris was jailed. Somebody was jailed for 4.5 years. 21 people were arrested in the southern France in December of 2013 as well. What? This is not true. I don't even know this. This is not true, Marsh. Don't be putting that. So I'm not going to say the dad joke I put there because it's kind of bad. I love horses. So across this, we have 13 countries, hundreds of millions of dollars. No more hairy horses. And real prison sentences just because somebody put horse meat in lasagna. And also, I don't even know why someone would do that to begin with. Like, a horse is so much more expensive than a cow in a lot of places. So, weird. Whoever did not read the instructions at their job or, like, drank too much on the job totally lost their job on that one. So, then we have the Barilla CEO scandal. Same year, different story, though. And it's one radio interview that causes this. So in September of 2013, the chairman of the world's largest pasta company said gay families should eat other pasta. 5 years later, Barilla became one of the most LGBTQ-friendly companies in food. So the chairman, Guido Barilla, radio interviewed on an Italian station, Radio 24, and his words translated said, "I would never do an advert with a homosexual family." So from 2014 to 2019, Barilla spent 5 years on corporate diversity as an overhaul. And it became one of the highest rated food companies on the HRC's corporate equality indexes. One radio interview led to them having to rebuild for 5 years as well. So then we have the temperature danger zone, whichever way it is. So we need to talk about a lot of things, but it actually is one of my biggest pet peeves in the entire world when I see people that don't know this or that just choose to not know or not care, because you can put a lot of people in danger, especially depending on people's immune systems, and bacteria is so iffy. So when we're talking about pasta, there is pasta safety. I know I'm a nerd. But also cut tomatoes are on the FDA's like high risk list. A lot of people don't know this, but once you cut a tomato and it hits the air, it's in the temperature danger zone. It's not on ice. It's not being chilled. It grows bacteria. You only have a certain amount of time before that bacteria can become deadly. It doesn't mean it's going to become deadly and possibly end your life, but there is a possibility that that 14-foot Subway sandwich that's out at your family gathering all afternoon could lead to you going to your grave. And it's really not that difficult to make sure that food is iced or that it's put back in the fridge and you just get it out. It's really not. And it makes sure that you're not wasting food as well, or money on medical care. Because from the temperatures range, and I always like to tell people even less than this, so like 38 degrees, so that you're being safe. But from 40 degrees to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, you have the temperature danger zone. And the USDA food safety list and inspection service says the same temperature gauge, but the FDA actually says that it's 41 degrees Fahrenheit to 135. I say there's no room for error, so you should just be extra safe and probably do an extra 10 for each to err on the side of caution, because your thermometer might also not be calibrated. There's a lot that goes into this. Obviously, a nerd. You guys are seeing my nerdness right now. But Actually, I think you always see my nerdness, so I don't even know why I'm trying to pretend like I'm not a nerd. You should never leave any food out of refrigeration for more than 2 hours, for the most part. You should try to keep it above 90 degrees. Um, if it's above 90 for at least an hour, put it back in the fridge. When you're reheating things, it should be up to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And there's a lot of temperature control for safety, depending on, is it a raw or cooked animal product? That's interesting that people eat raw animal products, but to each their own. I didn't know cannibalism was normal. Cooked plant foods, including rice, beans, and pasta, are also something that can contaminate you. And any cut fruits or vegetables, okay? So, like cut melons, cut leafy greens. I know you're like baffled. You're like, oh my gosh, watermelon can kill me? Yes, yes, it can. So, please, don't, if you want to go, don't be a Joe. Go do something cooler than eating a cut tomato at your family reunion that's been out all day, as well. So, are you sure that metric wasn't created by the big tomato industry? N That's funny. But actually, there is a story, I do think I put it in here, I'm wrapping up the end, about how the sauce came, and it's actually because a bunch of people died from tomatoes. So, it was not in Italy, by the way. So, cut tomatoes are super dangerous, and a whole intact tomato is very acidic and shelf stable. But once you cut it and expose that inner flesh, which is super weird to say, the cut surface contains moisture. That moisture has sugar and nutrients and everything bacteria needs to grow. So, cut tomatoes at room temperature are on the FDA's TCS list as the same as raw chicken, believe it or not. So, everyone always talks about raw chicken. Nobody's talking about them tomatoes. With the foodborne illness numbers, the FDA estimates 48 million Americans get sick from foodborne illnesses every year, which leads to 128,000 hospitalizations and 3,000 deaths annually. That's just an estimate. It's actually really hard to tell with a foodborne illness for the most part. 2 hours, 40 to 140, pasta, rice, cut tomatoes are all on that high risk list. Just remember that. 2 hours, 40 to 140, pasta, rice, cut tomatoes, anything, melon, all the things, anything. Just do everything. Everything's high risk. Just put it back up. Just put it back up, you know? So I'm officially dead. You could be, if you've ever had food poisoning, you would then probably take food safety very seriously. I feel like the dehydration you get from food poisoning is something out of this world, literally. So then we have the college student who died from pasta. So it put pasta safety much more on the map. In October of 2008, so this is also more new, but a 20-year-old Belgian student ate leftover spaghetti and died in his sleep. The pasta had been on the counter for 5 days, which is normal in some cultures, and the bacteria's toxin survived reheating it, which is also very possible. People want to think, oh, I can reheat my food. It'll be good. I can freeze it. That's not always the case. So believe it or not, it's science does not explain bacteria all the time. And I honestly think science is just another word for the miracles that go on here. That one's not a good miracle, let me tell you. That's a bad miracle. But this 20-year-old man in Brussels, Belgium, had cooked spaghetti 5 days earlier and reheated it in the microwave. Within 30 minutes, he had a severe headache, abdominal pain, and nausea. He was found dead the next morning. And the autopsy showed acute liver failure. And it was due to the Bacillus cereus bacteria and cerulide toxin at 14.8 milligrams per gram. 2 hours. Food can be out for 2 hours. And then you should put it in the refrigerator every fracking time. Or you're going to be like this guy. You should really not even eat leftovers that are 5 days old, in my opinion. You do you. I would not cook that much food that you have that much spaghetti 5 days later. It's not really safe. Bacteria can even grow. You see things growing on your food in the fridge. So your body's a temple. You're like putting it in your body, I don't know. It's a little bit crazy. It is a little bit crazy. So then we have a lot of pasta related deaths that actually happen every year. It kills several hundred Americans, and 5,000 Americans die from choking every year. According to the National Safety Council in 2023, 41% involve food. About 2,000 food choking deaths per year in the US. Pasta is also on the CDC list of a common choking food for children under 4 and adults over 65. Wheat allergies caused an estimated 100 to 150 American anaphylactic deaths per year, according to the FDA. So the best estimate with the numbers and the math that I did, which may be off because I suck at math, but in the United States, we have 300 to 500 deaths per year linked to pasta in some way. It's all in the sauce. I'm joking. Sometimes it's in the noodle. And worldwide, we have 2,000 to 5,000 deaths per year. Don't be one of those because you learned about the temperature danger zone. So, several hundred people to thousands of people die every year. Most of them are preventable and most of them are by choking, but you do have that bacteria that sometimes gets you. So then we have the instant ramen because we're gonna lighten things up at the end here. About 100 billion servings of instant ramen are eaten every year, mainly because college is so expensive and people are poor. Just joking. Everyone loves ramen late at night as a snack. It's good. I might eat ramen after this. The man who invented it failed at selling salt first, though, which is funny because the Mongol Empire and all of that with the salt tax. The story is that Momo Foko Ado, born in Taiwan in 1910, had a salt making business that collapsed after World War II. He spent a year in a backyard shed in Osaka. And on August 25th of 1958, he launches chicken ramen. In 1971, invents cup noodles and lived to the age of 96. And why ramen is Chinese? It was brought to Japan by Chinese immigrants in the 1880s. It was first specialized in a ramen shop in Tokyo in 1910. So we have one man, one shed, 1 year, and 100 billion servings per year that are brought to the rest of us because otherwise I think it would be a local cuisine. So we can thank him in that shed and that he sucked at selling salt for the rest of us to have this snack. I just threw a bunch of stuff out in my fridge. See, Tree, I'm saving you lives. I'm saving you lives. Killer pasta. I'm so dead. What? I'm so dead. I actually had a very severe burn, the one above that, Allison. The boiling water aspect as well. I had to go to the hospital twice. I had a very bad accident at work where I got burned with pasta water, and it was very bad. They thought at first they thought I might have to do like some skin grafting stuff afterwards. It was really bad. It wasn't painful at first. It was painful after because how the skin regrows because it got all over my neck and my chest. And it because I was in a kitchen, it's working on a line. I had like line clothes on, so I had a t-shirt and everything, and it got like stuck here because I'm a girl. And yeah, you can't really tell unless I'm really hot and I get like kind of burnt or take a hot shower because I think only psychopaths take cold showers, but it's good for you. So I should do it more. But when I take a hot shower, I can see it and my skin is just a different color there. But yeah, I do agree. People do die by boiling water and you can go. I went into shock after that actually and had to go back to the ER because I couldn't eat food later that week. It was horrible. Horrible time. Horrible. I do think boiling water is a lot scarier than pasta. But we also have some world records I'm going to talk about. And pasta has a lot of world records that nobody talks about, but we're going to talk about them here to lighten things up after we talk about people dying from pasta. A hot shower in the I can't say that. Hot shower in the summer is ridiculous. Get out of here. Get out of here with that. Why would you say that? Mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. I do this for my hair. You said it, brother. You said it, brother. Not me. Mm-mm-mm. All right. So we're going to talk about this Guinness World Record for the longest egg noodle, measuring 525 feet. It was prepared in a restaurant in New York in June of 2011. And this cooked noodle weighed 29 pounds, 9 ounces. It's insane to me. Literally insane. Um, and then, I mean, we have a lot of them. So then we also I have pictures of a lot of them. So there's this one. Then we have, this is the longest noodle. So is this the same one? I have so many of these records. I'll show you all I don't know where the thing's at. 525 feet sounds like a choking hazard. How are you so funny? I'm telling myself I'm funny, but how are you so funny? I'm obviously not typing that, but I mean, we got a lot of pasta going on. And it's all because of this lie, apparently. Close your eyes and trust the sauce. Trust the sauce with the Marco Polo travels to be on your spoon. Okay, going back to business. I got distracted. So that one was in China, obviously, with the picture. But they did have the longest egg noodle that was in New York, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's this one. The longest, no, this one's also in China. Listen, they have so many of these records. Look up these crazy pasta records for yourself if you are interested in it. Um, Look it up. I mean, just spend the day looking at noodles online. This is what kids should be doing today, looking at the noodles, making noodles with their family. Um, oh, that sounds like some good footage. I love snack. Well, weird fun fact about me. I actually like cold pasta from the fridge, and I used to keep sometimes I still keep some of the pasta separate. My grandma has a really special pasta recipe, that's been in the family for a long time, and I love to make it. And she always used to have a container of cold noodles, and I love eating just plain cold pasta noodles like a child, like a child. But through the record keeping, we have a Chinese chef stretching a single noodle nearly 2 miles. And pasta has been eaten in space. So we have the longest single noodle being 10,191 or 191. The judge was sitting there. Dominique just can't read. 10,119 feet in China in 2017. We have the Italian per capita pasta consumption at 51 pounds per year. So they're carby, but they're healthy carbs, healthy carbs. The US per capita is 20. So I guess that macaroni journal did not do the good bidding, only when there's a Great Depression. So I'm sure those numbers are coming up again. The pasta in space is the best kind, carbonara, my favorite. So the Italian astronaut Samantha Cristofetti ate vacuum-sealed spaghetti carbonara on the ISS allegedly in 2015. Then we have the prison ramen currency. So it is reported by Michael Gibson Light at the University of Arizona in 2016 that noodles are used as prison currency. Now, I've never been to prison. I don't plan to go to prison. But noodles are apparently used as money there. So I'd like to go back to doing that today because I could make noodles all day and look up history versus working. We have noodles in space, noodles being used as currency, I guess if you're in jail or prison, and then noodles being 2 miles long. So that's just the most, I don't know. But when we look at the story of what's on your plate and you look down at a plate of noodles, no matter what country you're in, you sometimes have spaghetti. And when we have spaghetti, it's a nice picture of a lizard. It comes with tomato sauce. You think it's Italian, but it's really not. Again, I guess the Italians were just trying to take over the pasta. And when you look at the history and death tolls, estimates of indigenous American deaths vary widely from 8 to 100 million from this. But a 2019 College London study estimated 56 million died. But from this, I don't know how I wrote that, but that made no sense. It's from the pasta sauce. I don't know why I wrote it like that. Anyways, when we talk about what went east, tomatoes domesticated by indigenous Americans called tomato in natto. Chili peppers were from Mesoamerica. Potatoes are from the Andes, and maize is from Mexico. Cacao is from Maya and Aztec, and vanilla, Totonac were from the people of Mexico. When we look at what came from Africa to make spaghetti, we have okra in West Africa, black-eyed peas in West Africa, not the band, and then watermelon, also from Africa, my favorite melon. I do love cantaloupe, though, too. And then coffee from Ethiopia. I don't know who's putting coffee in their spaghetti, but I'm all for it if you like it. The Transatlantic Slave Trade Database documents that an estimated 12.5 million Africans were forcibly transported for this as well from Africa. But the 5-step pasta tomato arc is that in 2000 BCE, the noodles exist. In 800 to 1100 CE, the Arabs bring dried pasta to Sicily. Al-Druzi wrote in 1154 that Sicilians under Muslim rule were producing dried pasta. In 1295, we have the Marco Polo misdirection. He was very misdirected as an individual. And then 1521 to 1790, the tomato arrives, and Italians actually refuse to eat it. So in 1521, tomato seeds are reaching Spain. In the 1540s, tomatoes reach Italy. So this isn't even that long ago, really. You think about tomatoes being everywhere. It's kind of funny. In 1544, the Italian botanist, Pitero, I'm not going to say all that name, describes tomatoes as golden apples. I think that's funny. In 1692, Antonio publishes the first Italian tomato sauce recipe. And then in 1790, Francesco Linardi publishes the first Italian tomato and pasta recipe. In 1790. And then the last step. So from the 1800s to 1900s, it was considered a poor man's food and then a global icon. Approximately 4 million Italians immigrated to the United States between the 1880s and 1925 period. American canned tomato technology made the Italian-American red sauce possible. And spaghetti and meatballs is an Italian-American invention through some of this and people making that transition over the pond. So the ingredient origin roll call we have is really weird, and I feel like you got to pause with each one because we have wheat from the Fertile Crescent in 9000 BCE, pasta technique in Arab Sicily from 800 to 1100 CE, the tomato from Aztec Mexico in 1540s, olive oil from the Mediterranean in 6000 BCE, garlic from Central Asia in 3000 BCE, basil from India, no year, black pepper, bleh, from India, no year. Parmesan cheese, that one's a good one. Italian, but a cow was domesticated in Anatolia. And then a much better spice, red pepper flakes from Aztec or Maya Mexico as well. Not a single ingredient is from where the dish is from. So there's no such thing as an authentic cuisine really throughout the world, as much as people want to say it. Pad Thai was promoted by Thailand's national dish by the prime minister in the 1930s. Croissants are Austrian, not French. Fortune cookies are American, probably because we're all pretty much obsessed with the greed and fortune, and that's been instilled in us since the foundation of this country. Buffalo wings, who were invented in Buffalo, New York. I think that's so funny. But in 1964, tikka masala was created in Britain, though disputed. And you have to think, how much do you know about everything that's on your plate every time you cook it and when you think of your family traditions? And we're going to bring it all home. So what started off, I love how I just have this lizard up on here. It's not safe. We need to make sure he's safe. But let's bring it all home at the end here. So we started this episode with a bowl of noodles preserved by an earthquake 4,000 years ago. We end up with a plate of spaghetti on your kitchen table tonight or on the photo of the lizard I just showed you. He might be choking, so I had to take it off screen. I don't know lizard CPR. We have the same food 4,000 years apart. The noodle didn't change. The people who made it did. Between those plates are a Venetian merchant who wrote about magicians charming sharks in India, a sailor named Christopher Columbus who read that book, wrote 366 notes in the margin, sailed west looking for it, and died believing he reached Asia, also known to being cutting off hands for people that couldn't produce gold that did not exist there. A Viking named Leif Erikson who actually reached the Americas 500 years before Columbus, two Icelandic sagas that recorded his voyage, the Aztec gardeners who first tasted a tomato, African farmers who first roasted a chili pepper, not the red hot chili peppers, though, the Italian peasants who survived on spaghetti pomodoro because they couldn't afford meat, the 4 million Southern Italians who immigrated to America because their country starved them, probably because they were trying to make pasta illegal, and the enslaved African cooks whose techniques shaped every Southern American kitchen. Marco Polo was called a liar for 400 years. Real American newspapers from the 1700s, almost 90 years before the United States existed, as what we know it today in its foundation, were debated whether his book was real. Adam Smith was citing him on The Wealth of Nations in 1776. London papers cited him from Chinese paper money in 1799. And then a pasta company, out of nowhere, stuck the only documented lie in a story in 1929, which probably made people doubt it even more. He never claimed to bring pasta. They invented it as a paste. dietary paste because they needed to make money. So greed, again, comes into this story. The FBI investigated Marco Polo's maps in 1943. J. Edgar Hoover personally signed the analysis. The CIA named a 20-year top secret intelligence series after him in 1953. It included 11,000 pages of classified analysis, almost more documents than the files that were just released to us. The Library of Congress carbon dated his maps in 2008. The US government somehow takes Marco Polo more serious than most universities or their own citizens do. Marco Polo worked for an empire historians say killed tens of millions of people. He owned a slave for 30 years, and he hid his daughter to the world, or his daughter was hidden for 700 years. His male bloodline apparently died by 1417, but he does have one descendant that is reported to be alive today, living in Monaco. A pasta company in 1929 invented our Marco Polo pasta myth that has been repeated through time in a trade magazine to sell more spaghetti during the Great Depression. The BBC made 8 million people believe spaghetti grew on trees in 1957. A failed Japanese salt merchant invented instant ramen in a backyard shed in 1958, and the world eats 100 billion servings of ramen a year now. And it's about to be 100.01 because I'm about to eat some. Every year, several Americans die from pasta-related causes. The temperature danger zone is between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't ask me about Celsius, though. I'm an American. It's where bacteria happens, and it can be dangerous for you. The cut tomatoes that make the spaghetti dish are on the FDA's high-risk list, and there are known cases where lots of people have perished for tomatoes and not knowing how severe they can be with bacteria. 2 hours on the counter is your hard limit. Please just remember that because I don't want anybody dying from those maters out here. There's no such thing as an authentic cuisine. I'm going to be honest with you. Food is food. Humans are human. That's the basis of it. I don't know why we try to complicate that. Every traditional dish on earth is a snapshot of a moment when our migration, conquest, trade, and refuge converged at someone's kitchen table. Food is a story of humans. What I believe to be the most lied about food in human history is also one of the most honest things we have. It's a record of who got moved, who got killed, and who got displaced, who got fed, and who got remembered. I don't know why that made me want to cry. Knowing this doesn't ruin the meal. It just means you're eating with the people before you that were displaced at your table. And it's probably going to be the most honest meal you've had in a long time. So the next time, I don't know why this made me so sad. The next time the world's on fire, I think that all of us should remember, who are you eating with tonight? Because the noodle is not a food. The noodle is a passport through human history. And every bite is a stamp from somewhere your ancestors have been. So when you sit down the next time you see pasta at your plate, you probably should think about who you're eating with and why you're here in the first place. Thanks for sticking with me. Like pasta sticks to a lot of our guts. And I'll see you on the next one because, listen, this brought me to so many other topics that I found interesting. And apparently I'm emotional about the sauce. So we have that going on. But I am going to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you guys for coming today. We're not buying lies anymore. Yeah, or black pepper. We're not buying that black pepper. Oh wait, where am I at? Okay, why am I so tiny? I'm big now. Mama, I made it. You can see some of my pillows because it's moved now again. Please try my high carb diet paste. The Great Depression can thank us for ruining it. Greed is the reason for most of our problems in today's world. I agree. I think that I think the prince of this floating rock thinks that they can pry on our ego and our greed and our desires or weaknesses easily. And most people give in throughout their life to certain things, but it's a choice. And I think it's a prince that's never going to be the king. So I just think that's how that works. How that works. There's a priest strangler. Oh my gosh. This is wild. See? The ultimate psyop is that spaghetti grew on trees. Listen, I know, and it only costs 100 euros. 100 euros. That's what it cost. That's what Mamma Mia. I love that one so much. I'm going to have pasta. Husband, if you see this, it's definitely not even good pasta, but I want fazoli's. And it sounds so good. Thank you for coming, Christopher. Thank you for being here and listening to me for this long. Yeah, see, now you're gonna get it in my head. I love that. I love that. I love that. I'll have it done by what are you stop? You cannot. What are you saying? Why do you say things like that? You are so silly. Okay. So, I'm doing pasta-tastic is what Marsh is telling me in the chat. So, thank you, Marsh. Thank you all for being here. I don't think I missed anything. Marsh, is there a starred thing that I missed? I want to make sure that I do not miss that before I hit end live because I'm tired and my voice hurts. I'm making sure. I just don't want anyone to think I forgot them. You're good. Okay, cool. I want to make sure if there were any that I did them. Thank you guys for coming. Remember the whole reason you're here. Don't take it so serious and just, strive to be a good person and eat lots of carbs. It's in the sauce. It's always in the sauce. Or who burned the sauce and, killed and displaced people, apparently, sadly. Thank you guys for coming. I don't know why I'm waving over there. You guys are over here and might not even be over there. Might be over here with the way that it's set up, but I'm like discombobulated. Yeah. I had to write all this out because there was just so much going on. There is a lot I also have real quick. I have a bunch of pictures of oh wait, what did I do with that? So this is also, before I leave, this is the travel of Benjamin of Toledo that I was talking about earlier, that inspired Marco Polo's journey, which I found to be really interesting. And it was really dangerous for him to travel at this time because of the Babylonian exile. So that was an important and interesting part of history that I saw. I have so many pictures of pasta on this. I have like over 100 slides of pasta. These also sound really good right now. Some of these are so random. Look at this one. Noodles. Noodles. More noodles. I don't know if you'd call that noodles. That looks like it should be one of those that should be deadly. This is actually one of the first places where they believe that the stone grinding for certain things led to evidence of the earliest examples of agriculture, and it's in Egypt as well. So they discover barley originally throughout evidence of farming there with some of the stone grinding things were believed to be, but it's now not the case because it was dated between 19,000 and 17,000 years ago using radiocarbon dating. And it was part of a settlement that people would come back to during the prime seasons of summer and winter. And they had vacation homes. This is the Han Dynasty I was talking about earlier, if you're a nerd and want to see it. Oh, and I have lots of different types of pasta to get crazy with it. We have a lot. There's so many types of pasta. There are hundreds of pasta. Look at all of them. Did you even know this many existed? There are so many. I have so many pictures of pasta. I like this one, route. So, long story short, it's in the sauce, and, don't be a farfar however you say that one. Don't clip that. And your pasta plate took, like, 500 years to assemble with all of that. But thank you all for coming. Remember, you could be a 4,000-year-old noodle, and the shapes do taste differently. It's really interesting. I do agree with that. Don't be a 4,000-year-old noodle. Be a good noodle, and have a good night.